episode. And just like the other pod pals, I'm a junior attending Monmouth University, and I'm studying secondary education, and my concentration is English. Be sure to check out episodes from the other pod pals, Matt, Lacey, and Alex, that are also on this channel for more information and fun topics. Today, we're going to be talking about classroom management through the lens of teacher training. But first, it's time for straight statistics. Today's numbers come from the National Center for Educational Statistics. They report that 98.8% of public school teachers participate in professional development at one point throughout the school year, most spending somewhere between 1 and 8 hours on a PD activity. Yet during the 2020-2021 school year, 32% of public school teachers said that student misbehavior interfered with their teaching. Why is this? Today's episode will go into the disconnect and what we as educators can do to close it. Today, we're joined by Dr. Kathleen Lozinak, a veteran fourth grade teacher at Chapel Street Elementary School in Stratford, Connecticut. We're hoping to learn more about teacher training through her direct experience in the fields with student teachers and exchange ideas that may be helpful to you folks listening at home, aspiring educators or not. So without further ado, let's meet Dr. Lozinak. Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm excited to meet with you. If you wanted to just start by introducing yourself and how long you've been in education or what inspired you to go into teaching, all that good stuff.
Okay, so Kathleen Lozinak. I have been in teaching for more than 30 years. I started as a I started as a psychology major because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My mom was a teacher and I was a bit of a rebel, so I didn't think I would want to be a teacher because I was just being defiant, I guess. But then I became I was going to school for psychology. I was out and about a lot, and I noticed how much kids like to be around me and how much fun I had with them. And so I switched my major to special ed, and I taught. I student taught middle school and high school, and then my first teaching job in special ed was integrated preschool and self-contained. So there was 5 regular, they call them peer models, little 3 and 4-year-olds, and then the special ed kids. So I did that for a year, and then so that was a long-term sub position if somebody was on maternity leave, so I did that. And then I taught self-contained special ed in Oxford, which was a new program that they were creating because at the time Oxford was a very, very small school district, and they had a resource teacher at every grade level. Mm-hmm. So if there were 4 of the grade, there was one teacher to handle whatever number of special ed kids were there. And they couldn't service the real high needs kids. There was a little girl with Down syndrome that she really couldn't be mainstreamed. There was another little girl that was super low functioning. So they made this self-contained program for all those kids that just couldn't be mainstreamed. So I got them all. So whoever had a meeting and they said, oh, this kid can't really be in the mainstream, give him to Kathleen. So I stayed there for 3 years, and it was kind of like what we would call now a grant position. They only funded it for as long as they had money. So every single June, those first 3 years, I would get a pink slip, which would mean I wasn't guaranteed a job the next year. So I started to look for different jobs. So then I went and taught high school special ed, and that was interesting, sort of fun, but I didn't like the politics of high school administration, and it was just really hard to support all the kids and with all different teachers and all different places, so that was tricky. Mm-hmm. So then I came to Stratford and I taught special ed here for 3 years before I went to 4th grade.
Great. How long have you been in 4th grade now?
More than 20 years, about 20.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you've been at Chapel for most of your career?
So I taught 3 years at Stratford Academy Johnson, which was the grade 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I taught 4th grade at Center School till it closed, then I came here.
Great, thank you. So what this whole like interview is like based on is like classroom management and like teacher trainings, which I know you've had lots of experience with, like student teachers coming in and interns. So how would you sort of like best describe your like management style in the classroom?
So my management style with the kids is very structured. Like I spend a lot of time doing what I tell my student teacher, I call it like front loading, or teaching the kids what school is supposed to look like. So we do interactive modeling. Okay, we're gonna, the first couple weeks of school is all about, the expectations of what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it, and then gradually release to them. So for instance, like, here's how you line up to go to special, who can show us how you can walk quietly to the front of the room, stand facing forward. So very structured, like here's where you stand, here's what it looks like, and then they practice it, and then you gradually trust them to do it the correct way. And I do that with everything. Here's our morning routine, here's how you come in, you sign in, you do this, and we practice it together, and then, they model it for each other, and we do like a, what did you notice about what they did well, what could we have improved on that? And I do that with everything. So like, here's how you greet people, here's how you reply when somebody greets you. And every year it cracks me up because things that I assume that, this last year's group knew how to do this year's group should know. You can't assume anything. You can't assume they know how to put their coat on a hook. You can't. I had a kid this year who said, he turned into, I'm like, you didn't put your name on it. And I said, I need your first name, your last name. And he just had his first name. And I go, well, put your last name on it. He goes, I don't know my last name. I'm like, I guess I shouldn't have assumed that the fourth grader knew his last name. Okay. And then I had to teach him, he had like one of those double Hispanic names. So which name does mommy want you to use? The whole thing. So we had to go through this. We had to teach him to write his last name. Now he can put his. So I would say very structured and very. So it has that gradual release component to it. Like I have to teach them, and then I assume that they can do it.
Yeah.
But behavior wise also, or just like how I manage my routines and stuff.
Yeah, very like routine based. You said you've had like experience in other like districts or other grades. Did you say you've like adapted anything like based on Chapel's environment or like age levels at all? So
every class is different. So even if you're, like your mom's been teaching the same grade level forever, she'll tell you every year is different. So the group of, like the kids that I had in front of me last year, I had less students, but they were more high needs. Like they constantly, they couldn't work with partners. So like part of our math curriculum is you need to turn and talk and share with your partner the strategy. They couldn't do it no matter how much I modeled it, no matter how much I modified their groups. They just couldn't engage appropriately with a partner without me sitting right with them. So I think every year you have to adapt to the kids that you have in front of you.
Would you say there's anything like in particular that you've used over again, or maybe even just like on a daily basis, like something you try to implement every year?
So I use a lot of responsive classroom, so that you're showing the students you care about them, that you respect them, that this is their classroom environment too. I start every day with morning meeting. I've been doing that my entire teaching career. I do morning meeting because I just think, especially at Chapel, so that answers that question. So especially at Chapel, some of these kids are on the bus for 40 minutes. So they go out to their bus stop at 7:15. They don't get to school until after 8 o'clock. So they need here's what school looks like every day. You have to greet them at the door. You have, good morning, welcome, so happy you're here. Don't forget, in the school environment, this is the expectation. Mondays are so tough for kids because some of their home environments, there are no expectations. There are no interactions. They get off the bus on Friday and nobody talks to them again until Monday. so they have to kind of be re-taught what school looks like. And what the expectations are for school. So I do a lot with morning meeting, a lot with responsive classroom management techniques. The district, and I've been trained multiple times in restorative practices, restorative conferences, things like that. The state of Connecticut just adopted that as a mandated component of school behavior management, that they want people to talk with kids and say, you know, how did this happen? How do you feel about that? Talk with the victim. Wow, how did you feel when they did that to you? So the restorative conferences are an important part. There was a behavior expert a million years ago when I first started teaching. His name is Canter, and he did strategies like proximity, like, you know, you just go stand, if the kid is off task, you just go stand next to them. If they're, you know, you just give them a gentle tap on the shoulder. So he had all kinds of common sense kinds of things that most people just do. Like, you know, like if a kid is acting up, go stand next to them and they'll probably stop. You know, so he had a lot of common sense things, but he made a ton of money, like putting it into a book and selling it. So some of those things are like kind of ingrained in me.
Yeah, we've talked a lot in class. We've mentioned like the look or like the turn as just like nonverbal cues, sort of. And that kind of thing.
And the kids get it. They absolutely respond to it. We were talking, because I do a lot of district committees, and one of the schools in town is really struggling with their 6th grade overall. Like, there's a bunch of girls that don't respond to anything. Like, they have no respect for teachers. So that's the main thing. Like, if the kids don't respect you, if they don't think you care about them, they won't respect you. But you have to develop that relationship. So you have to figure out a way to get to know every kid. So what I do is I send out a survey to the parents and to the kids. And I used to do it as a hard copy letter in the summer. But what I do now is I send out a survey, like I get their emails as soon as I can. And I send them a survey and their parents a survey to get them to know them as people and students and families. And if I don't get the email back, then I send it hard copy to the family. And if I still don't get it, then I, redo it again at the beginning of school. But you have to get to know them as people. So, how was karate last night? Or did you get to see your grandmother this weekend? So any kind of interaction you can have with them as people helps them to be more receptive to you as the teacher. So they have to have that respect for you before you can expect them to listen to anything you say.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot too, like understanding either like life at home or like in their community, like how they're brought up in that way too.
Yeah.
Also in class, we've mentioned like the 3 pillars of management, which we've talked about: instruction, motivation, and then discipline. Do you have one of those that sticks out to you or is like maybe the most significant?
Well, so what they talk about a lot with responsive classroom is that basically responsive classroom says any problem you have is your fault. It's not the kid's fault, it's your fault. So if they're not engaged, it's because your lesson wasn't engaging enough. If they're misbehaving, it's because you didn't set your expectations correctly. So if they're bouncing off the walls, it's because you didn't give them an energy break. So it's kind of cool to read, like, you're the boss. The buck stops here. If things aren't going well in your classroom, it's your fault. It's not the kid's fault. So the instruction has to be engaging, and it has to be challenging enough. It has to be differentiated. You can't ask your poor little kid that's learning disabled to do the same thing as your enrichment kid. And if you're asking your enrichment kid to do what you're asking your learning to do, he's going to be bored, so he's going to be acting up. So the instruction has to be planned to be engaging for everybody, just the right level of challenge. So the discipline part, again, it's your fault. So if you don't do those things, then you're going to end up disciplining. What was the middle one you said?
Motivation.
Motivation. And again, so if it's something, you have to teach math, I have to teach multiplication, but I can make it so that there's like, when you finish this, we're going to play a multiplication game, or when you finish this, you could work with your partner on this. So the motivation is to kind of like know that it's not all going to be boring. It's not always going to be me sitting in the seat, you talking, that there are some things that they'll like better than others, and then they'll be motivated. And again, if they like you and respect you, kids want to please. They really do. They want you to say, nice job.
Yeah.
And then the discipline comes. I think what's adapted in my mindset over the years, so I had that special ed background in the first place. And then I was a parent of a fourth grader when I started teaching fourth grade. And so I kind of used my mothering style with my discipline. But now I'm a grandmother of a fourth grader. And I think I kind of use a combination of all three of those things. Like, I am strict and I do have really high expectations, but I also understand, like, shit is going on in their lives. Like, there's some, and sometimes they just walk in and they're having a really bad day, just like anybody else. And I have to be aware of that and then responsive to that. Like, I just can't be like, yeah, I know life is bad. So you just take a few minutes to acknowledge that and see what, do you need a break? Do you need to get a drink of water? Do you need to talk to somebody? I'm going to give you a few minutes, and then I expect that then you'll be ready to learn. And by fourth grade, I think it's one of my favorite reasons that I teach them is they're old enough to understand. Yep, I got all this going on, but school is a safe place. The expectation is I can, kind of leave some of that crap at the door and do my school stuff.
Yeah, we've discussed like having like a solid transition, and like the environment from the hallway into the classroom like has to be distinctive.
So
yeah.
I greet every kid by name. I pray for all of them on the way to school every morning. They just need to know that you care. That's the big thing.
Kind of switching gears maybe to more like a training perspective or like professional development. What do you think is like the main focus now? I know you talked about like the responsive classroom stuff.
So what should it be, or what is it?
What like you've been told sort of implement now? As
far as classroom management and discipline and behavior?
Yeah.
So what Connecticut is saying, so what Stratford is following their lead, is the restorative practices and restorative conferences. That kids need to understand that their behavior impacts others. Stratford does a lot with the ruler program out of Yale. Do you know that?
No, I don't think I know.
Well, you should look it up. So it's called Ruler, and it's the guy who developed it is based on the research he's done out of Yale. He wrote a great book called Permission to Feel, which if you want to borrow a copy, I have an extra. I gave one to everybody in my family. So it talks about how kids need to be able to identify their emotions. They need to be able to identify the emotions in other people. They need to be able to learn strategies to see how their behavior, their emotions impact their behavior, their emotions impact the behavior of others, and then they need to learn how to regulate their emotions. So yeah, you're coming in, you're feeling super cranky and whatever, but is that how you want to feel all day? And I said to them, I go, like, I know people who like being cranky. That's just who they are. They like to be cranky. They don't want you to try to cheer them up. They don't want you. So we talk about, is this a feeling you're comfortable with? We talk about how emotions impact our bodies. Like, people literally get sick to their stomach. They're so anxious. People literally give themselves a headache. They're so angry. So we talk about all that, and then we learn strategies how to deal with it. So do you like being so nervous that you're sick to your stomach? Most people don't. So what can we do? It will help if you take a walk. It will help if you talk to somebody. It will help if you get a drink of water. Well, how can we help you not feel that way? Because what they're saying is that some kids come in with so much baggage, they can't possibly learn. If they are so nervous, there's a variety of emotions that block their learning or them being receptive to learning. So we start our day with that as well. How are you feeling today? Do you like that feeling? How can we help you if you don't like that feeling? And we talk about how some of the kids, so they come in kind of all over the place. So when they're little, they have the conversations with the 5-year-olds, like they just teach them 4 basic emotions. Are you happy? You're sad? You're mad? I forget the yellow one.
Oh yeah, like on the chart, the 4-quarter chart. I've seen those. Yep.
So the 5-year-olds just learn 4, but by the time you're in 4th grade, there's like 50 words. So the kids are funny because like they'll know they're mad, and they know that that's high pleasant, high energy. Like they're so mad they could hit somebody. So they pick like these words in the top quadrant of red, where they're like furious or fuming, like all these kinds of super duper angry words. Well, do you like feeling that way? And they now get like, again, the 40-minute bus ride, the time at the corners. Like some of the kids, in addition to the bus ride, their parents dump them at the bus stop a half hour before the bus comes. So they haven't had structured supervision in over an hour.
Yeah.
So we do a lot with that. So I would say that was really vital training. Like, because I grew up in an environment and in a time, I think, when nobody acknowledged your feelings. When people asked how you felt, they were like, are you sick? That's all. They didn't ask, are you happy? Are you sad? Nobody thought that your feelings would impact your day. If you were feeling any of those uncomfortable ways, you just had to suck it up and do what you were supposed to do anyway, which didn't work. It's never worked. Like, it makes people crazy.
Yeah.
So I would say that is some of the most important professional development I've had in several years.
Yeah.
I do continue to modify the responsive classroom and the restorative practice to work with the kids in front of me. But I just think that social emotional component is the most important thing that we can do for kids right now.
Yeah, big on like the SEL learning. I wanted to ask, like, you've had experience teaching like pre and post pandemic, which has like had a big impact on the kiddos. 4th grade, was that their kindergarten year then, 2020? Yeah. So that was, probably had a big impact on them. So do you think COVID, there was like a switch with like emphasizing SEL now for those kids?
Some of the research was there before, but I definitely think that people are more aware and more willing to be open to it, because I think even though the research exists, a lot of people were resistant to it because they were still in that same mindset of, I don't care how you're feeling, here's what you need to do. But I think after COVID, grown-ups struggled so much with their regulation that they were like, oh yeah, I guess if it impacted me this bad, it must have impacted kids too. So I think it's always been an issue. I just think people are more willing to talk about it and work with it. Because, like I said, because it impacted them personally,
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And then just one sort of question to wrap up. Would you have any advice to first-year teachers as far as coming in with obviously less experience, or like in terms of behavior and management?
Like I said, there's a couple of great books out that I always recommend to my beginning teacher about making sure you take those first, 4 weeks of school to get your routines and your structure in place. So definitely take the time. It is not important that on day 1 you open your math book to page 5 and get started. It is important that you establish those relationships, that you get those routines in place. Because teachers are like, well, it says I have to teach math from this time to this time and reading from this time to this time. But you're never going to get to anything if you don't have those structures and routines in place. So if your math block, is an hour long, the first few weeks, you're going to take a half hour of that time to go through all the routines and procedures. Otherwise, you'll never get a solid hour of instruction because they'll always be like, where am I? And just all the basic management things, like here's how you hand in your paper. Here's what, I need your name and your date. Like, or you're going to spend all your time like, whose paper is this? Whose paper? It's just, so like I said, front load everything. So make a list of all your expectations. And again, you're going to model it on a combination of your student teaching experience and your own personal experience and what went well and what didn't go well. So like, oh, my fourth grade teacher was horrible. I'm going to make sure I do the opposite of everything she ever did. So just to have all your expectations in place for yourself and then teach them. So the expectation is when you come to the door, you greet me. What are they going to call you? So you have to teach them. You're going to say, good morning, miss, whatever. And then if that's the expectation, then you hold them to it. Don't forget, you're going to say, good morning, Miss McGuire. Every time you come to the door, let's practice it. Who wants to show us the right way to greet your teacher? You're going to use eye contact. Like every little thing, you're going to teach them.
All right. Perfect. Well, that's all I had for you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat. And now I have a list of all the things that I have to go read and look up that I'm going to look into now.
It was nice to see you.
Thank you so much again. Have a great rest of your day. A special thank you again to Dr. Lozinak for joining our conversation on today's episode. Based on what we heard from her today, our teaching tip of the day is setting a repetitive routine early in the school year. When asked to give a piece of advice to new teachers to set students up for success, Dr. Lozinak suggested establishing a solid routine and expectations to make the most of later instructional time. And also to allow students to model these behaviors and set examples for other students. Thank you for tuning in to Managing the Minds of Tomorrow. For more information and resources on classroom management, be sure to visit the EduTactics website and follow at RB Public Schools on Instagram. Everything will also be linked in the description box below on this video. So be sure to tune in next time with the Pod Pals for more episodes like this one on secondary education, special education, and first year teaching. Thank you for watching.